Imagine the mist-shrouded shores of Lindisfarne in 793 AD, where the salty tang of the North Sea air mingles with the faint incense from monastic altars, and peaceful monks in rough woolen robes chant their morning prayers in harmonious Latin, their voices rising like a fragile hymn against the relentless crash of waves until suddenly, dragon-headed longships erupt from the fog like beasts from Niflheim, unleashing a horde of fur-clad giants whose axes gleam like the fangs of Fenrir, their guttural war cries shattering the dawn and turning sacred serenity into a blood-soaked slaughter in mere heartbeats. This wasn't just an attack. It was the thunderclap heralding the Viking Age, a cataclysm born from the icy fjords of Scandinavia where overpopulation squeezed hardy Norse folk farmers, fishermen, and traders into seeking glory and riches abroad. Driven by tales of Valhalla, where Odin rewards the brave fallen with eternal feasts. As the first ship grinds onto the pebble beach with a crunch that echoes like breaking bones, a Viking warrior pauses, his breath fogging in the chill, whispering to himself, "Odin Allfather, let my blade sing today, as in the sagas of old, where heroes like Sigurd slew dragons for eternal fame guide me to plunder or paradise. Feel the slick chill of sea spray on your skin as these Norse raiders, descendants of ancient Germanic tribes who once roamed the forests of the north, row in rhythmic unison, their calloused hands blistering against salt-crusted oars, muscles straining like coiled serpents, while the scent of pine tar from the ship's hull mixes with the metallic promise of impending violence. Row harder, brothers, the Jarl bellows over the wind's howl, his voice gravelly from years of shouting commands across stormy seas, invoking Thor's hammer to smash any who stand in their way. Much like the gods' legendary battles against frost giants in the Eddas that inspired these men to embrace fury as divine. Their raids weren't random piracy, but a cultural rite etched into their souls, fueled by oral sagas passed around flickering hearths, stories of Ragnar Lodbrok, the legendary king who, according to the saga of Ragnar Lodbrok, faced a pit of serpents with unyielding courage, teaching Vikings that true glory came from bold ventures into the unknown. Picture the wide-eyed terror of the monks, their sandals slipping on dew-slick grass as they flee, the acrid smoke from overturned candles stinging their eyes while the Vikings storm ashore, boots thudding like war drums on the holy ground, shields raised high and painted with runes to ward off evil spirits. These invaders, bands of jarls and freemen bound by blood oaths and the allure of silver hoards, targeted monasteries first for their undefended treasures, gold chalices glinting in torchlight, jeweled crosses ripe for melting into ingots echoing the omens foretold in the Anglo-Saxon chronicle whirlwinds, lightning storms, and fiery dragons streaking the skies, signs that even the heavens trembled before this pagan onslaught. In the dim glow of the scriptorium, a surviving scribe later scribbles in anguish, "The heathens poured out the blood of saints around the altar, as if the end of the world had come yet in their eyes. This was but a harvest for their gods, Odin and Frey, who demanded tribute in the form of captured slaves and sacred relics. Sense the escalating dread creeping through your veins like frostbite as word of Lindisfarne's fall spreads across Europe on the lips of terrified refugees. From the windswept British Isles to the vine-covered courts of the Frankish Empire, where kings like Charlemagne fortify coasts with earthen walls and iron spikes, his gaze darkening seaward as he mutters to advisors, "These Northmen strike like Loki's illusions unseen until too late." By the 840s, Vikings no longer vanished with summer's end. They overwintered in enemy territories, building fortified camps amid snow-blanketed meadows. Their campfires crackling with roasting game, while laughter mingles with the sharpening of blades, transforming fleeting raids into calculated invasions that reshaped maps. This shift, as chronicled by Alcuin of York in his horrified letters, wasn't mere greed, but a clash of worlds, pagan Norse, steeped in myths where gods feasted in halls of the slain, against a Christian Europe clinging to crosses that now seemed powerless against the storm. Breathe in the smoky haze rising from burning thatch roofs, the screams of villagers piercing the air like arrows from Odin's own bow, as these seafaring warriors exploit winding rivers like the Seine, their oars dipping silently through murky waters scented with river mud and fear. Navigating inland to sack Paris in 845 with flames that light the night sky like Balder's funeral pyre. Their tactics, forged in the rugged Scandinavian landscapes, where survival meant outwitting blizzards and barren soils, blended lightning speed with unbridled savagery, drawing from ancient legends like the Aesir Vanir War in the prose Edda, where gods themselves learned that cunning alliances and brutal strikes won the day. A raider, wiping blood from his brow amid the looting, reflects inwardly as Thor fished for the Midgard serpent, pulling chaos from the depths. So we pull wealth from these soft lands, may Mjolnir protect us from their king's wrath. For our sagas warn that even gods face Ragnarok. Hear the deafening clash of steel reverberating through your skull as berserkers. Those fury-possessed fighters channeling Odin's wild ecstasy charge forward, biting into their shields with teeth grinding like millstones, their veins pulsing with the hallucinogenic fire of fly-agaric mushrooms or raw adrenaline. Embodying the Ulfhednar legends, wolf-skinned warriors from the Ynglinga saga who howled into battle as beasts. For glory or death, Valhalla calls one, berserks roars to his kin, foam flecking his braided beard like sea spray, inspiring the line to surge like a tidal wave. Their practical helmets without the horned fantasies of later tales casting elongated shadows that chilled the bloodied ground. This raw psychological terror, amplified by reputations built on sagas of invincible heroes, often broke enemy morale before a single blow landed, turning ordinary Norse men into living myths that haunted monastic chronicles for ages. As the raids swell in ferocity, feel the heart racing shift from isolated coastal hits to audacious penetrations deeper inland. Like the great heathen army's thunderous march across England in 865, where thousands rallied under cunning leaders such as Ivar the Boneless, whose saga claims he was carried into battle on a shield. His boneless form a curse or gift from the gods, leaving villages engulfed in flames that reek of charred wood and despair. The air thick with the metallic scent of spilled blood and the sweet allure of mead-soaked triumphs. It's no longer just about plunder. It's a seismic reshaping of empires, where Viking longships become the oars stirring history's crimson currents, their crews whispering of Thor's duels with giants as they press on. Undaunted, we've awakened the old ways. A veteran Viking murmurs around a flickering fire, his eyes reflecting the embers, like the binding of Fenrir. Where sacrifice chains the wolf, our raids will bind these lands to our legacy. The tension builds relentlessly, like a bowstring drawn to breaking, as European lords muster ragtag levies in muddy fields, their chainmail clinking nervously under overcast skies, only to discover their ponderous forces outflanked by these elusive northern phantoms who strike and fade like wraiths from hell's realm. How do we battle ghosts forged in ice? A battle-scarred English thane whispers to the biting wind, his sword grip slick with doubt. As the clash of faiths intensifies, Norse gods demanding bold deeds for afterlife honors versus Christian pleas for divine intervention that seem unanswered. In this whirlwind of chaos, the Viking world of deep fjords, rune-carved stones, and epic sagas collides with a trembling Christian Europe, birthing echoes that resound through centuries, from the fiery omens preceding Lindisfarne to the legendary fates awaiting warriors in Valhalla. Now, as the fog of that inaugural raid begins to dissipate, unveiling the unrelenting horror poised to engulf the continent, let's venture deeper into the essence of their dominion, the masterful vessels that bore doom across unforgiving seas, whispering secrets of Norse ingenuity and mythic resilience. Glide with me now across those treacherous northern waters, where the salty brine stings your nostrils and the relentless wind howls like the wolves of Fenrir, unveiling the true genius of the Vikings not merely in their savage might, but in the sleek, serpentine vessels that slither through swells like Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent encircling the world in ancient Norse lore, poised to strike at the heart of unsuspecting realms. These longships, masterpieces hewn by skilled Norse shipwrights in the shadowed fjords of Norway and Denmark around the 8th century, emerged from yards where the air thrummed with the rhythmic pounding of adzes on oak, planks overlapping in clinker fashion, riveted with iron nails that clinked like distant thunder, creating hulls that flexed and breathed with the sea's fury, enduring tempests that would shatter the rigid cogs of Mediterranean traders. As the first rays of a pale sun pierce the fog, a shipbuilder pauses amid the shavings scented with fresh resin, murmuring a prayer to Njord. The Vanir god of winds and waves, bless this keel, O Lord of the seas. As you blessed the Skidbladnir in the myths, the ship that could fold into a pocket, yet carry all the gods, let ours carry warriors to glory and back. Defying the deep's devouring maw, feel the rhythmic surge beneath your feet as the rowers, these weathered sons of Scandinavia farmers by winter, reavers by summer, pull in perfect harmony, their sweat-soaked backs glistening under woolen tunics, hands raw and blistered from oars wrapped in leather grips, while low chants of ancient skaldic verses rise above the creak of timbers, invoking tales from the poetic Edda where heroes like Leif Erikson braved unknown oceans. Steady, kin pull as one, for Odin grants no mercy to the weak. The steersman growls from the aft, his gnarled fingers clutching the tiller carved with protective runes, eye fixed on the dragon-headed prow that slices through foam like a predator's snout. A fearsome emblem not just to cow enemies, but to appease sea spirits, lest they drag the craft to the depths, as in the legend of Ran, the goddess who netted drowned sailors for her underwater hauls. These ships transcended mere transport. They were living weapons, with shallow drafts of less than a meter allowing them to beach on sandy shores or glide up rivers choked with reeds. Their versatility chronicled in the annals of Ulster, where Irish monks described fleets ascending the Shannon in 837, turning inland sanctuaries into smoldering pyres far from the ocean's roar. Picture the nimble Carvey, the smallest of raiders with 13 benches accommodating 26 oarsmen, its lithe form darting like a fjord falcon for swift hit and run assaults that left coastal hamlets in acrid smoke before the sun climbed high. The deck cluttered with coiled ropes smelling of tar and sea salt. Scaling up, the larger skaids stretched to 30 benches for 60 warriors plus holds crammed with provisions, dried cod, hard bread, and barrels of ale, their keels carved from solitary ancient oaks, that whispered of Yggdrasil, the world tree connecting realms in Viking cosmology, providing unmatched stability amid heaving waves. In the epic saga of Eric the Red, penned around the 13th century, but echoing earlier oral traditions, such vessels braved the Atlantic to Greenland and Vinland. Yet in Europe's terror-stricken chronicles, like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, they sowed unrelenting panic. Their sudden appearances in misty bays, heralded by the ominous thud of oars, echoing like a giant's heartbeat, driving villagers to flee with the scent of fear thick in the air. Sense the mounting unease gripping your chest like icy fingers as European sentries atop crumbling watchtowers spot these spectral silhouettes on the horizon. Hearts pounding at the sight of prows adorned with intricately carved beasts, dragons coiling with bared teeth, serpents hissing defiance, eagles with outstretched wings believed to harness the power of these creatures from the myths, warding off malevolent forces while instilling primal dread in the beheld. Vikings ingeniously customized their ships with removable masts, lashed down for river voyages, enabling stealthy ambushes deep in hostile lands, as during the 845 siege of Paris, where a fleet under Ragnar Lodbrok, whose legendary exploits in the Gesta Danorum describe him as a dragon-slaying scourge, ascended the Seine undetected. The water lapping softly against hulls as guards on the banks muttered in growing alarm. The river whispers betrayal tonight, carrying devils from the north. A helmsman, scanning the banks through the twilight haze, reflects quietly. As Frey's boar Gullinbursti pulled his chariot across skies, so our sails catch the gods' favor, let no Frankish arrow pierce this sacred wood. For our sagas foretell triumphs over even the mightiest empires. Hear the gritty splash and grind of keels, scraping shingle as these vessels beach with lethal precision. Warriors vaulting overboard into knee-deep surf that chills to the bone. Waves foaming around their legs while shields interlock with a resonant clatter. The ship transforming into an impromptu rampart if retreat beckons. Unearthed treasures like the Gokstad ship from a 9th century Norwegian burial mound in 1880 reveal their sublime elegance, 23 meters of graceful lines, with gunwales lined for hanging shields in a bristling display, forming a floating fortress lighter than 20 tons, yet capable of ocean crossings. This portability shone in portages over land, crews hauling vessels on rollers across isthmuses, bypassing fortified narrows, a tactic echoing the mythic journeys of the gods across Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, turning natural barriers into mere inconveniences and amplifying the invaders' ghostly elusiveness. As the campaigns grow bolder, feel the tension coiling like a serpent in your gut with the rise of grander drakers. Dragon ships spanning up to 35 meters and crewed by over 100 souls, their massive square sails of wool striped in crimson like spilled blood, billowing with the fury of storms that evoked Thor's chariot drawn by goats Tangrisnir and Tangnjoster. These weren't impersonal crafts. They embodied the Viking ethos, with hulls etched in runes for divine safeguard. Shipwrights chanting invocations during construction to infuse the wood with resilience, as in the legends where dwarves forged unbreakable artifacts for the Aesir. In the thoughts of a novice oarsman, gripping the bench amid rolling swells, this hull cradles my destiny. As Naglfar will carry the dead to Ragnarok, may it bear me to riches untold, or a warrior's end worthy of the skald's songs. Breathe deeply the pungent aroma of pitch-black tar sealing every seam, rendering the vessel impervious to the North Sea's gnawing leaks, where hypothermia lurked like a silent assassin, if not for layered furs and cloaks heavy with the musk of reindeer hide. Navigation blended arcane lore with sharp instinct sunstones of Icelandic spar polarizing light through clouds to find the sun's path, or ravens released skyward to seek land. Mirroring Odin's messengers, Hugin and Munin, who scoured the world for knowledge, their cause guiding crews through fog-shrouded voids. Follow the All-Father's eyes, a seasoned navigator intones solemnly to his apprentice, the bird's wings flapping against the salt-laden breeze, turning vast oceans into navigable paths of plunder and peril. The dread escalates like a gathering gale as these fleets synchronize into predatory packs, lashing ships together with stout ropes for mutual support in churning seas, forming armadas that devastated outposts like the monastery on Iona in 802, the air filled with the crackle of flames and anguished cries as monks clutched illuminated manuscripts now destined for Viking hearths. Their multifaceted prowess dazzled in clashes such as the Battle of Malden in 991 immortalized in Old English poetry, where longships anchored as archery platforms, arrows whistling like Valkyries' calls before warriors disgorged in a tide of steel. Yet woven into this ingenuity was a profound respect for the sea's whims, rooted in folklore where merfolk lured the unwary, reminding sailors to offer libations of ale overboard, a ritual that blended practicality with the supernatural tapestry of their beliefs. Now, as the longships recede into the swirling mists of recollection, their wakes trailing echoes of mythic voyages and mortal conquests, let's arm ourselves further with the instruments of their trade, the arsenal and garb that elevated mere men to the status of legends, heightening the nightmare from oceanic arrivals to unyielding assaults on shore. Step closer now to the forge's infernal roar, where the blistering heat warps the air like a mirage from Muspelheim, the realm of fire giants in Norse mythology, and the relentless clang of hammer on anvil echoes like Thor's own strikes, crafting from raw bog iron the deadly instruments that would carve the Vikings' legend into Europe's trembling flesh. These warriors, emerging from a culture where every tool doubled as a weapon in the unforgiving Scandinavian wilds, donned gear not for ostentatious display, but for brutal efficiency, practical attire, born of long winters and longer voyages, influenced by centuries of Germanic traditions that evolved into a lethal blend of innovation and intimidation. As sparks fly like stars from Loki's mischief, a blacksmith pauses, wiping sweat from his brow with a soot-streaked arm, and intones softly, "Forge strong." As Broker and Sindri hammered Mjolnir for the Thunderer in the dwarven tales, let this blade thirst for blood, unyielding as the chains that bind Fenrir, so my kin may reap glory or join the Einherjar in Valhalla's halls. Feel the balanced heft in your palm of the Viking sword, the crowning jewel of their arsenal, a blade up to 90 centimeters long with a pattern-welded core, twisting high-carbon steel around softer iron for an edge that could shear through mail like parchment. Often etched with Ulfbert inscriptions, marks of master smiths from the Rhineland traded northward, blending foreign craftsmanship with Norse runes invoking Tyr, the one-handed god of war and justice. This steel whispers of fates woven by the Norns. A warrior might reflect, tracing the fuller groove that lightened the weapon without weakness. His fingers calloused from years gripping hilts wrapped in sharkskin or wire for unslippable hold in the frenzy of battle, where a single slash could decide between a hoard of silver or a grave mound. These swords, unearthed in graves like those at Repton in England from the great heathen army's era, weren't commonplace. They signified status. Heirlooms passed through sagas of bloodlines or seized from fallen foes. their pommels shaped like lobes or crosses to balance the swing in the chaotic dance of shield walls. Sense the versatile swing of the axe, the ubiquitous emblem of Viking might. From the broad, bearded Dane axe with its ash haft, stretching 2 meters for two-handed sweeps that hooked shields or cleaved helms, to the nimble hand axes balanced for throwing or hacking in tight melees, forged from laminated iron to hold a razor edge amid the scent of pine resin used to secure heads to handles. Archaeological troves, such as the Mammon axe from a 10th century Danish burial, reveal intricate inlays of silver and gold depicting mythical beasts, symbolizing the wielder's bond to gods like Odin, who in the Havamal advises wisdom in war as much as wrath. Thor, lend your fury to this bite. A berserker growls inwardly, hefting the weight with veins bulging, envisioning the god's hammer shattering Jotun skulls as he charges. The axe's curve designed to pull enemies off balance, turning farm tools into reapers of souls in raids that echoed the apocalyptic battles of Ragnarok, foretold in the Völuspá prophecy. Breathe the taut tension of the bowstring drawn back, arrows fletched with raven feathers, Odin's birds for ironic flight, tipped with bodkin points to punch through armor or broadheads to rend flesh, bows hewn from resilient yew or elm drawing up to 100 pounds, loosing volleys that whistled like banshees from the decks of longships or hidden ambushes. In sagas like that of Egil Skallagrimsson, a poet-warrior whose bow snapped in fury at the Battle of Brunanburh in 937 as per the Egil's saga, archery softened foes before the clash, a tactic blending ranged precision with the melee's raw intimacy. A archer, knocking an arrow amid the acrid smoke of campfires, mutters, "Fly swift as Sleipnir's hooves, 8-legged steed of the Allfather, and pierce the heart of these southern weaklings. May Friar bless the harvest of their falls, as he does the fields with rain." Hear the lethal whistle cutting the air from spears and lances, the backbone of any Viking's kit, hurled as javelins with leaf-shaped iron heads for deep wounds or thrust in phalanx like pushes, some barbed like fishing hooks to lodge and torment, carried in quivers of 3 or more for initial barrages before drawing closer arms. From Viking age finds at the British Museum, like those from the River Thames, these atgears measured up to 3 meters, lightweight for range yet sturdy, influenced by Roman spicula but adapted for Norse mobility. Odin, god of the spear, Gungnir that never misses, guide this throw to claim a soul for your halls. A hurler whispers fiercely, releasing the shaft with a grunt, the wood flexing like a serpent's strike, embedding with a thud that vibrates through bone and echoes the mythic throes in tales where gods wagered worlds on a single cast. Picture the sturdy round shield as a Viking's steadfast companion, a meter-wide disc of limewood planks glued and riveted, its central iron boss domed for bashing foes' faces or trapping blades. The rim bound in rawhide chewed soft to absorb shocks without splintering, painted in vibrant ochres with swirling knots or ravens to invoke protection and terror. These weren't passive defenses. In formation, they interlocked into impenetrable walls, as depicted in the Bayeux Tapestry's fringes showing Viking influences. Light at 5-7 kilograms for agile parries. A shield maiden. If legend holds like Hervor in the Hervorar saga, who wielded arms as fiercely as men, might think. This wood stands as Yggdrasil's branch, unbreaking against the storm, let no arrow breach it. For my fate is woven in the web of war, demanding valor over fear. Envelop yourself in their sparse yet cunning armor, debunking the horned helmet myths born of 19th century operas. Instead, simple nasal helms of iron guarding the face without blinding the wearer. or leather caps padded with sheep's wool to cushion blows. The air heavy with the tang of tanned hides boiled in beeswax for waterproofing against relentless rains. For the elite jarls, chainmail byrnies of interlinked rings up to 30,000 forged by hand, draped to the knees over gambesons quilted with horsehair. Flexible for rowing, yet proof against slashes, as evidenced by fragments from Geirmundbu in Norway. The only complete Viking helmet found. This iron skin sings of battles etched in the runes. A chieftain reflects while donning it, the links chiming like wind through fjords, drawing strength from legends of Sigurd's impenetrable dragon-scale armor in the Volsunga saga, blending mortal craft with divine aspiration. Feel the insulating warmth of fur-trimmed cloaks pinned with ornate brooches. Woolen tunics dyed in woad blues or madder reds for camouflage in mists. Trousers of rough weave bound at ankles with leather straps to repel mud and thorns. Footwear of turned cowhide sewn watertight gear that warded off the North's bite as effectively as it allowed swift strikes. Accessories like arm rings of twisted silver, oaths sworn upon them as in the Landnámabók chronicles of Icelandic settlement, signified loyalty and wealth won in raids. A raider. Adjusting his belt hung with a sayax knife for last resort guts, ponders. These threads bind me to kin and gods alike. As the Norns spin life's threads, may they weave victory today. Lest I face hell's cold embrace unprepared. Sense the intangible armor of psyche and ritual. Beards braided with beads invoking ancestors. Tattoos of Yggdrasil or Mjolnir amulets to channel divine favor. Berserkers ingesting fly agaric mushrooms for trance like invincibility. Howling like wolves in Ulfhednar garb from the Haraldskvedi poem, where fury made them impervious to fire or iron. This wasn't chaos, but calculated edge, rooted in a worldview where fate was malleable through courage, as Odin sacrificed an eye for wisdom in Mimir's well. Enter the rage, become the storm, a berserker chants to himself, foam at lips, the mushroom's bitter taste lingering as adrenaline surges, transforming fear into fuel in clashes that shattered kingdoms. As sagas like Injal's saga weave tales of heroes in such array, breaking shield walls and toppling thrones, their equipment a symphony of lethality that amplified individual valor into collective dread. Yet true power emerged when geared warriors coalesced, formations turning lone wolves into an unbreakable pack. With the chill of steel against your skin and the weight of legend upon your shoulders, evoking promises of eternal fame or forgotten graves. Let's advance to the core of their synergy, the battle formations that fused scattered raiders into a forge-hardened force, where unity and chaos escalated the terror from individual clashes to empire-shaking onslaughts. Feel the ground tremble beneath your boots as Vikings assemble on a fog-laden field, the damp earth squelching underfoot like the pulse of a waking giant, their breaths clouding the crisp air heavy with the scent of wet grass and impending storm here, in the crucible of combat. Scattered raiders transform into a cohesive machine of war, formations drawn from ancestral wisdom and the harsh lessons of fjord skirmishes, where survival hinged on unity amid chaos. These weren't the rigid legions of Rome or the chivalric arrays of later knights. Viking tactics emphasized fluidity and ferocity, blending Germanic tribal strategies with innovations born of seafaring raids, as echoed in the Icelandic sagas like the Orkneyinga saga, which recount earls mustering men into shield walls that withstood Orkney's wild winds. A jarl surveying his gathered kin with eyes hardened by salt and scars, calls out in a voice like rolling thunder, "Lock shields, brothers as the gods stood shoulder to shoulder against the Jotuns at the dawn of time. So we become an unbreakable chain. Let no gap invite the coward's blade, for Odin favors the bold who fight as one, weaving our fates into a tapestry of triumph or eternal feast in his hall. Picture the iconic shield wall, or Skjaldborg, the bedrock of Viking infantry, where warriors stand shoulder to shoulder in dense ranks, round shields overlapping like scales on a dragon's hide, the wood groaning under pressure as they brace against charges, bosses aligned to form a barrier impenetrable to arrows or spears. This formation, evidenced by archaeological finds of shield fittings in mass graves, like those at Visby from later medieval battles influenced by Viking styles, allowed for a defensive phalanx that could advance steadily. Shields absorbing impacts, while axes and swords lashed out from gaps. The air filled with the resonant thuds of weapons clashing like hammers on anvils. In the mind of a frontline fighter, gripping his shield's rawhide strap slick with sweat, this wall's my kin's flesh hold firm, as Thor held the world serpent's line, unyielding even as muscles scream. For breaking means death's cold kiss. But standing invites the Valkyrie's choicest gaze. Sense the tactical depth as the shield wall evolves in battle. Not a static bulwark, but a living entity, warriors rotating to relieve the exhausted. The rear ranks hurling javelins over heads in volleys that rain down with the whistle of angry hornets, softening enemy lines before the push. Historical accounts from the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, where Harold Hardrada's Vikings formed such a wall against Harold Godwinson's forces, as per the Heimskringla saga, describe how berserkers anchored the center, their howls invoking Odin's frenzy to demoralize foes, while flanks curved inward like a boar's tusks to envelop attackers. Push forward, feel their fear crack like ice under boot. A seasoned veteran shouts to his comrades, the formation inching ahead amid the metallic tang of blood and the acrid bite of sweat-soaked leather, turning defense into offense in a grind that wore down heavier armored opponents through sheer endurance rooted in Norse sagas of heroic stands. Hear the coordinated roar as Vikings employ the swine array, or svinfylking, a wedge-shaped assault formation mimicking a boar's head, with the Jarl or a champion at the tip leading a pointed charge to pierce enemy centers, axes chopping paths while widening ranks followed like tusks gouging flanks. This tactic, mythologized in the saga of Olaf Haraldsson, where Saint Olaf used it to shatter pagan lines, drew from wildlife observations in Scandinavian forests, where boars charged relentlessly warriors in the wedge interlocking shields at angles, the momentum building like an avalanche, crashing through with the crunch of splintering wood and the screams of the impaled, a lead berserker, foam flecking his lips from mushroom-induced rage, bellows inwardly. Charge as Fenrir lunges at the gods, tear the heart from their host. For in this wedge lies our path to legend, where even Ragnarok's chaos bows to unbridled fury. Breathe the tension of feigned retreats. A deceptive maneuver where Vikings simulated flight to lure overconfident pursuers into ambushes, breaking formation only to reform suddenly, encircling the disorganized like wolves herding prey. A ploy chronicled in the Battle of Hastings accounts, where Norman influences echoed Viking roots. The air thickens with dust kicked up by retreating feet, the scent of trampled earth mingling with the metallic edge of drawn blades hidden in weight. Then the trap springs, shields slamming back into walls as the encircled flail in panic. Fall back, draw them in like fish to the net. A cunning leader whispers through gritted teeth, invoking Loki's trickery from the myths. where deception turned the tide against superior numbers, amplifying the psychological warfare that made Vikings seem supernatural. Feel the versatility in smaller skirmish groups, where raiders divided into herds, elite bodyguard units of 12-20 men sworn to a lord forming mini shield walls for hit-and-run probes, scouting ahead with the rustle of leaves underfoot and the distant caw of ravens signaling Odin's watch. These units, as detailed in the King's Mirror, a 13th-century Norwegian text reflecting Viking-era advice, blended loyalty oaths with tactical mobility, allowing rapid redeployment on uneven terrain like riverbanks or forests. Where larger armies faltered, a herdman, scanning the tree line through mist that clings like a shroud, mutters to his oath brother, "Stay close, our bond is iron, forged in the fires of kinship and combat." As the Einherjar train daily in Valhalla, ready for the final battle. Let no foe sever what the Norns have tied. Sense the escalation as naval tactics bleed into land formations. Longships beached serving as anchors for shield walls extending from shore. Archers on decks providing covering fire with arrows slicing the air like sleet. Turning landings into fortified beachheads as in the siege of Paris retellings. The waves lap rhythmically against hulls, saltwater spray mixing with the coppery stench of wounds, while formations adapt to the tide's pull, warriors wading in shallows, shields raised against projectiles. Hold the line from sea to soil. A captain commands over the din, drawing from legends of Aegir's feasts where sea gods hosted warriors, symbolizing the seamless merge of maritime prowess with terrestrial dominance that overwhelmed coastal defenses. Here the clash intensify in open field battles, where Vikings incorporated horse skirmishers, though not heavy cavalry like Franks using ponies for flanking maneuvers. Riders hurling spears before dismounting to join the wall, a hybrid style influenced by steppe nomads via trade routes, as hinted in Varangian Guard chronicles from Byzantium. The thunder of hooves blends with war horns' mournful wails, formations shifting like tides to counter charges, the ground vibrating with the stampede's fury. A mounted scout, wind whipping his cloak, thinks fiercely. Ride swift as Odin's Sleipnir. Scout the weak point, then dismount and lock in. For glory awaits in the crush, not the flight, as our sagas etch heroes who stand till the end. As these formations coalesce raiders into legends of unbreakable resolve, weaving individual sagas into collective epics that echoed across Europe. The true nightmare unfolded not in set-piece battles, but in the shadows, the elusive guerrilla warfare that turned Vikings into phantoms, haunting the continent's dreams. As the structured clamor of shield walls fades into the whispering winds of untamed wilderness, draw nearer to the elusive dance of shadows where the Vikings' true mastery unfolds not in grand clashes, but in the art of guerrilla warfare. Swift as Loki's deceptions and merciless as a winter gale, turning Europe's vast landscapes into a labyrinth of terror and uncertainty. These Norse marauders, honing tactics from their rugged homelands, where fjords and forests demanded cunning over brute force, excelled in hit-and-run raids that struck like lightning from Thor's hammer, vanishing before retaliation could muster. A strategy that evolved from early coastal assaults to deeper incursions as chronicled in historical analyses of Viking warfare. A scout, creeping through dew-soaked underbrush with the earthy scent of moss filling his nostrils, whispers to his band, "Strike swift as the All-Father's ravens, claim the spoils, and melt into the mist, for our sagas warn that the bold who linger invite hell's grasp. But the clever weave legends from the unseen, feel the pulse quickening ambush erupt from hidden glades. Vikings bursting forth with war whoops that shatter the silence like cracking ice. Axes flashing in dappled sunlight as they overwhelm isolated patrols or unwary caravans, their lightweight gear allowing rapid retreats laden with plunder. This guerrilla prowess, rooted in surprise attacks and mobility, drew from legends like the saga of the Volsungs, where Sigurd's stealthy slaying of the dragon Fafnir symbolized triumph through guile over raw power, blending myth with the practical raids that targeted monasteries and trade routes for maximum gain with minimal risk. Now fall upon them like wolves from the pack. A raider hisses through gritted teeth, the adrenaline surging like mead in his veins, as arrows whistle from concealed bows, felling foes before blades even clash, echoing the hit-and-run ethos that confounded slower European armies. Sense the sabotage's subtle venom, Vikings torching supply wagons under cover of night, the flames crackling hungrily and casting flickering shadows that dance like fire giants from Muspelheim, disrupting enemy logistics without direct confrontation. Historical accounts reveal how these tactics extended to riverine warfare, where longships enabled quick strikes inland, sabotaging bridges or poisoning wells to sow chaos, inspired by tales from the prose Edda, where gods employed trickery in their eternal struggles against chaos. In the dim glow of embers, a veteran mutters to his comrades around a hidden fire. As Loki bound the gods in knots with his schemes, so we unravel their kingdoms thread by thread, burn their stores, vanish like smoke, and watch their might crumble from afar. For the Norns favor the fox over the bear, breathe the tension of feigned vulnerability, where Vikings lured pursuers into treacherous terrain, boggy marshes, or dense thickets reeking of decay only to encircle and annihilate. A ploy akin to the boar hunt formations, but twisted for deception, as depicted in unconventional Norse strategies that prioritized adaptability. This psychological warfare, amplified by reputations forged in sagas like Egil's Saga, where lone warriors outwitted hosts through terrain mastery, turned fear into a weapon sharper than any sayax. Draw them deeper, let the land swallow them whole. A chieftain commands in a low growl, his eyes gleaming with the cunning of Odin, who sacrificed for wisdom to outmaneuver fates themselves. Hear the whispers of intelligence gathering, scouts blending into crowds at markets or eavesdropping in taverns thick with the aroma of ale and roasted meat, relaying vulnerabilities back to camps where plans unfurled like rune-etched scrolls. Viking raids often began with such reconnaissance, enabling precise hits that maximized loot while minimizing losses. A tactic interwoven with legendary narratives from the Orkneyinga saga, where earls scouted enemy weaknesses before striking. A spy, cloaked in nondescript wool, thinks inwardly as he slips away. Knowledge is Odin's greatest spear, pierce their secrets, and the battle is half won, as our tales of hidden heroes teach us to see what others blind themselves to. Picture the overwintering bases as hives of guerrilla activity, fortified camps in remote isles or river bends where Vikings launched seasonal forays, their presence a constant thorn eroding local morale, evolving from pure raids to territorial holds as seen in the establishment of Danelaw in England. The crackle of watchfires mixes with the distant howl of wolves, mirroring the beasts in Norse myths that heralded doom, while warriors sharpen blades and share stories of past evasions. This earth is our shield, now strike from its embrace. Retreat to its folds. A Jarl reflects, invoking the resilience of Yggdrasil's roots that withstand cosmic storms. Sense the culmination in hybrid assaults, blending guerrilla feints with full invasions. Like the great heathen armies campaigns where initial raids softened targets for larger forces. a strategic depth drawn from sagas blending history and legend. As dread mounts to a fever pitch, Europe's kings fortify in vain against these phantoms, the air heavy with the smoke of ravaged lands and the echo of unanswered prayers. We've become the storm they cannot chain. A raider boasts in hushed triumph, his saga unfolding in deeds that outlive flesh. Yet in this whirlwind of cunning and carnage, as the Viking age wanes into memory, whisper the timeless lessons etched in blood and brine, embrace adaptability like the Norse who turned weakness into weapon. For in life's battles, the swift and shrewd often claim victory over the strong, cultivate unity in chaos, as their bands did through oaths and guile, reminding us that true strength lies in bonds forged in adversity, and heed the call of exploration, venturing beyond horizons with courage. For as their longships braved unknown seas, so can we navigate our own uncertainties toward unforeseen glories.